Telling you, man, every time we get on this thing, something changes on this platform. Maybe it's because we're not on it enough or frequently enough.
It's one of those things, let me say this, yeah, we're gonna try and get these out more often. We've all been busy. Yeah, even if it's just one or two of us, we're gonna get something out to you. No, we're not. All right, Canteen, check it out. Like it's just it is what it is.
Get
Our
busy,
schedule.
man.
I tell you the schedule, especially the last 30 days has just been bananas between work and you know personal trips and stuff. It's been nuts, especially the last 3 weeks for me. Been absolutely crazy.
That's a good thing, though, because for our listeners out there, if we're not busy, it means that we're failing at our day jobs, which might mean that we're putting out more content more frequently, but our home lives will probably not be as good.
Yeah, that thing called money that makes the world go round. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think
If you're
Joe
not
hit us up
busy,
on he hit us up on group text like, "You guys still alive? What the heck?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, we're still
yeah,
here. We'll get something out."
yeah. It's it man, it's a slog. It's a slog. What can I say? I mean, there really hasn't been much going on in the news cycle the last 30 days.
Good lord, dude.
I don't
I
even.
tell you, well, one, you don't even know where to start. And I guess it's probably a good thing because we'd be putting out episodes like every other day because the dude, Trump, in my opinion, dude, he's working too fast, man. He could have spread this out over like 4 years and just been gold. But he's
Yeah.
like, dude, he is knocking stuff out. Like the news cycle can't even keep up with him anymore.
Well, the news cycle really hasn't been able to keep up with him since he came into office
Oh, yeah,
because he,
absolutely.
I mean, he's been in a full sprint. When he's not in a full sprint, he's making comments, and a lot of those comments are just to troll the media, just to
Yes.
get the talking heads going. And then he sits back and he's like, whatever, you know, the whole like, we're going to make Canada the 51st state. We're going to, yeah, Greenland. Yeah. Military options on the table. It's like, who says that? Like, who says that? The United States, knowing full well, the United States is not going to militarily invade Greenland. Like, it's not going to happen. But he just, all he's got to do is just throw a couple things out there, man, and he sends them into a spin-X, and they lose their collective. It's so, it's exhausting, is what it is. It's
I was
truly exhausting.
I was watching one of the comedians yesterday on Fox. I think it might have been Charlie Gasparino or one of those guys, something like that. I could be wrong, but he was like, one, he is a master troller and he loves it. Apparently, he loves to play with the media. So it's like you said, dude. He just throws some stuff out there. He's like, I'm not taking it off the table. And then the media will be stuck up. That looks fantastic, by the way. The media will be stuck on that stuff for a week, if not more. Right. And it's like, dude, he just threw it out there because you guys are going to run with some stupid shit for the next, week, 2 weeks, whatever. But on the other hand, like when you look at everything he's accomplished since day one, dude, it's a lot of winning. And at some point, like you have to he is at this position where, and I'm stealing this, I'm kind of summarizing it, but the dude has had the most epic comeback in like the history of mankind. He comes back, he's got his second term as presidency, he's a billionaire from all accounts, he's got a great family, like he's got everything. Nothing that any of the pundits, including us, say or do is going to take away from his success. So at some point, man, you just gotta get on the train and just like, hey, man, we're gonna ride this thing out. Everything's going well, and as long as it continues to go well, we'll support it. And when it sucks, then we'll call it out.
Yeah. Well, that's and that's a big part of it is, and that's why I kind of like, Ben Shapiro and a couple others is, hey man, just call balls and strikes. And, but at the end of the day, it does come back to, and even I have to, be reminded of this from time to time. And, you remind me of from time to time. It's like, hey man, as long as that dude's batting, 80% or greater, like we're good. He's
Yeah,
not going to he's not going to do and say everything we want him to, and he's going to do things we don't like and stuff like that. But as long as that dude's batting over 80%, hey man, we're good. The latest thing, oh man, dude, the airplane from UAE, the gift. And he's like, yeah, we'll use it as Air Force One, right? And I mean, everybody lost their minds, and everybody knows. Like, I mean, even I looked at that and I was like, that's like he's trolling them. He has to be trolling because there's no way that he's going to use that as Air Force One, right? I mean, there is a host of issues with that,
Oh yeah.
and right using that as Air Force One, but he knows that. He knows that he's not going to use that as Air Force One. But he was like, "Yeah, they're giving us this great big beautiful plane. I'm just we can probably use it as Air Force
And
One."
he brings up some
And
Sam Snead quote. He's like, "Hey, if somebody
yeah,
gives you a putt, you take it."
that's pretty. Yeah. And people lost their mind. That was all people talked about on X, and I couldn't even keep up with it because it was that narrative, that thing was moving so fast, especially on X. That was like, I'm not even commenting on this because it's already like it's moving. Is that train's moving way too fast. But yeah, dude, he knows he's not using that Air Force One, and but him just putting it out there, people were like, "Oh my!" And then people started talking about how, well, it's against the law to accept gifts and this, that, and the other. And it was like, was it against the law to accept $1.75 million for your, for your daughters? Looking at you, Obama, from the Saudis, right? And then people were like, "Well, that was only $1.7 million. That wasn't a $400 million plus plan." It's like, oh, okay. Now we're getting now we're getting into the different categories of okay, right? At first, it's not okay to accept gifts from foreign governments, and then it's like, well, it depends on the amount. It's like, oh, okay, all right. It's and then people want to clutch their pearls because they said something about the Saudis. He's like, he's meeting with the Saudis. The Saudis perpetrated 9/11, and you're like,
Oh Lord.
it's like you want to go back and see how much the Saudis donated to the Clinton Foundation. I mean,
Exactly.
are we really? I mean, you really want to do this? You know, it's wild. And
You know what the last several months has showed me is how bad our government really is. And you've been good about pointing this out. I mean, it's like, hey, dude, at the end of the day, GOP, Democrats, independents, libertarians, they all suck. And I'm thoroughly convinced that everybody, maybe with the exception of Rand Paul, but even him, he's got some quacko freaking ideas out there. But dude, they're not on your side. And, it's
no,
like today. Did you see the tweet from I think it was the House GOP that said it's time for Americans to get off the sidelines?
yeah,
It's like, and I forget who it was. Somebody came back, it's like, hey, we got off the sidelines on November 5th. It's your turn to get off the
yeah,
sidelines.
yeah, yeah. It's like, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? Because yeah, we put the guy back in office and we gave you a majority in both chambers. So I don't know what you're waiting on. It's so they also came down. Did you see? You remember the Hearing Conservation Act that was in one of the bills, and one of the things that it would have done, it would have taken suppressors off of the NFA.
Right.
The GOP removed it from the bill.
Of course.
The GOP removed it from the bill. They had the ability to remove suppressors from the NFA. You know what they did? They lowered the tax stamp. Now instead of $200, it's zero. You don't, but it's still an NFA item, and you still have to fill out the form 4 to get an NFA item. It's like, and they're like, and they're on social media touting this as a victory, and it's like, dude, you had the
They missed the whole
ability.
point.
Yeah, they missed the whole point of it, right? And it's, but we're on the sidelines. They had the ability to completely repeal the NFA. They had the ability to take suppressors off the NFA, but yet they like, ooh, yeah, no, we'll leave that on there, but we'll make the NFA tax stamp $0 instead of 200, and then we'll tout that as a win. It's like, what are you doing? It's the equivalent to when North Carolina got the supermajority in the state legislature, and no matter what, they could send a bill to, at the time, Roy Cooper as a North Carolina governor, he could veto it. They could override his veto, and 30 days later, it became law. They
Right.
sat on their hands and they did nothing. They could have passed so many of the GOP's initiatives, and so many of Trump's campaign. They sat and did nothing, and it's just like, once again, man, When I die, I want the GOP to be my pallbearers so they can let me down one last time.
Well, yeah, and you know what? That right there is the difference between Democrats and Republicans, because Democrats would have ran through whatever in the hell they wanted to, like they did. Hey, remember
100%.
this? Sometimes you just have to pass the bill to find out what's in it, right? I mean, what kind of stupid shit is that, right? But they would ram through, whatever their agenda is, and like, hey, man, do something about it. Your elected officials are the ones, that are pushing this bill through, and that's the difference with the GOP. It's going back to, well, we don't want to take the gloves off, because we got to be nice and kind to the other side. So when they come in power, hey, newsflash, they don't care. It's the old bringing a knife to a gunfight. The Democrats, when they get control of the House and the Senate, and eventually the presidency again. I mean, dude, look at the last 12 of the 16 years that we've had a Democrat president. And, I mean, I get a lot of this. We've had Democrat majorities, but dude, I just go back, like, how bad were the last 4 years before Trump? I mean, that's what we're seeing right now, is how bad they were. It's like, dude, it is incredible. And the Democrats, like, don't let anybody fool you. Okay. A lot of the GOP pundits are, existential, identity crisis and this, dude, they're not going anywhere. Everything ebb and flows, and you know how it is. But when you look at the wins that the GOP, that Trump has had since his term, like, even the Democrats, man, I mean, what bizarre world do we live in where they support MS-13? They support high gas prices. I saw an article today about why gas prices are going too low, why food prices are too low, why we actually need higher inflation. And then all of a sudden, it's he signs the prescription drug executive order. Now all of a sudden, you've got people like Bernie Sanders and these guys who've been fighting for it for years. Well, that's not necessarily a good thing. Like, dude, this is bizarre world. Like, they are not on the right side of anything. And you would think that if I'm a Democrat, like, hey, man, just sit back and go along for the ride. Like, the first year he's going to do his thing. GOP's going to do their thing, just like any party does. And you know what? Once you get in the second year, traditionally, you go into your midterms, you should probably take the House back. That's normally what happens. And it's like, hey,
Yep.
man, ramp up your campaign and everything, next year. Right now, like, they have zero support for anything. I think Schumer, it was like a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, he got up there on the podium and he was like, Trump's approval rating is like 34% or whatever, the lowest in modern, blah, 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 whatever it was, that number. And a reporter was like, well, your approval rating is at 17%. So does that mean that you were on the wrong side of that? He's like, well, polls come and go. It's like, dude, it was literally all within the same sentence, but they cannot get out of their way. Like, I don't get it.
No, they can't. And if they were smart, right? And so for the prescription drug executive order is a great example. If I'm a Democrat, and let's say I'm kind of a middle of the road Democrat, you know what I'm saying? I'm coming out and I'm saying, I'm couching that as, hey, we don't always see eye to eye with the president. We don't
Yep.
always see eye to eye with the other side of the aisle, but this was a bipartisan effort. This was,
Yes.
us whispering in his ear, and this is something we've been pushing for a long time. And we were able to help make this happen. That's how I'm couching that. That's not what happened, but that's how I'm spinning it. I'm definitely not coming out and saying, well, hold up now, this may not be the best. It's like, are you crazy?
They are.
It's them going back. They're simply out of touch with reality. It's them going back and the insulin, thing from his
The
first administration.
$35. Yeah.
Yeah, like, hey, we're capping insulin at $35. And they come back and, when Biden came into office, they got rid of that executive order. They basically overrode it. And then they, introduced, it was like, hey, we did that. It's like, no, you didn't. Like, that happened a couple of years ago, under the, the bad orange man. But yet you're trying to take credit. You undid what he did, and then you redid what he did. Now you're trying to, like, that's wild. Just, it's when stuff like that happens, I'm spinning that as, yeah, no, we've been fighting for this behind the scenes, and we don't always agree with them, but this was a bipartisan effort because at the end of the day, we care about you got to give them the old Zelensky, from Tommy Boy, because that's what we are. We care about the working man, blah blah. Right? But they can't do that. Like you
Well,
said,
no, I mean, look at
they can't get
Whitmer.
out of their own way.
Look at Whitmer with the folder in front of her face. That's
Oh,
it. Like he's bringing manufacturing jobs back to Michigan, and I'm like you. I'm like, hey, thanks, Mr. President. Like you just said, hey, we don't always see eye to eye, but what we do see eye to eye on is putting American workers back to work, especially in the auto industry, especially here where the heart of the auto industry in America, Detroit. Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, why wouldn't you? Instead, she's got like this folder in front of her face, at the White House. It's like, dude, embrace that stuff.
yeah.
You know,
Em- Embrace it and say, hey, it's it's not a great job, but sometimes this is how you get things done for the American people. You find ways to compromise, right? And that's what, because people are tired, people are sick and tired of the polarization. And if you can be one of those who, shows, hey, I can work with the other side on certain things. There's some things that we're not going to work with them on,
sure.
but I can work with them on certain things. And everybody, bringing manufacturing back to the United States is a win for everybody. And that's such an easy way to spin it. It's like, and you got to think, maybe I don't see the bigger picture, right? Maybe it's like, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I see the big picture. Because if you and I can sit here, right, on C3 with our 11 listeners, and come up with this stuff, and it's like, hey, this makes sense. Surely these, surely our quote unquote betters, right, educated at Ivy League schools, right, surely they have thought of this, but probably not, right? If we're
No,
thinking of this, surely they've thought of it. But it's crazy when the answer to the test is so obvious, but they don't do it. I don't understand it. Like, I really
well,
don't.
no, you just caught it. You just hit on the head. It's the quote unquote betters. I know what's good for you. We saw it during COVID. You don't know what's good for you. I know what's good for you, and that's what RFK, dude. I tell you what, that was genius putting that dude in the HHS. I don't
Oh
know if
yeah,
you've heard his hearings in the last couple days.
I I know. I think it was today. It got interrupted by a bunch of protesters.
Dude, he is killing it. I didn't see the protester interruption, but uh, they were talking about they're trying to play gotcha on a lot of things with vaccines and again he is stuck by. They tried to ask him, would you vaccinate your kids against measles? And he's like, hey, look, he's like, I don't think I should be giving medical advice. Number one. And two, if I do come out and say something like that in this hearing, it's going to sound like an endorsement. And I think the parents need to be educated, know the pros, know the cons, and then you get to decide based on your situation with your doctor.
It's
But
perfect.
one of the Democrats got up there and she gave this little monologue. I've been fighting to reduce prescription drug prices for 40 years. Da 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 da. And he gets up there and he's like, "Well, Trump did it in 100 days. You said you've been trying to do it for 40 years. Shouldn't you be celebrating this?" It's like I'd claim my time back. I'm like,
Oh, I love it. I love it.
you
Yeah,
know,
it's
and that's
so.
why I think with you look at him, like when was the last time you've heard from Shapiro? I think a lot of these moderates, dude, like I get it. They put the AOCs out there for money. Like I firmly believe it's fundraising, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there's no way that shit's
100%.
running. So I think a lot of your moderates, dude, like you look at your Shapiro's, like, even Whitmer, dude. I mean, they're just, dude, as much as we had Newsom on one or two podcasts, he's far from a moderate, but I think those contenders, like your top 3, 4, realize that, hey, look, we're not going to win with this messaging. And you don't even see them. You don't hear them
No,
at all.
no. And one of the things that's really died off is the whole trans messaging, right?
Oh,
You
yeah.
see that is dried up and went away. I don't. I can't remember the last time I've seen, aside from Elizabeth Warren. She said something the other day on X and whatever, about we see you trans people, whatever. And but other than that, dude, they stopped carrying that water. They stopped carrying that water quick.
Yes.
But yeah, you definitely, yeah, you don't see the moderates. I didn't even think about it until you just brought it up. You haven't heard anything out of Shapiro, except when
None.
somebody tried to burn down the governor's mansion. Um, but yeah, you haven't seen anything. I think it's one of those. Yeah, they're looking at that. They're like, I'm not getting anywhere near that messaging, because not helpful. To the
It's
future.
like Hakeem Jeffries when he's like, "Can you guys please stop going to El Salvador? Please stop going to El
Yeah,
Salvador." Like,
it's like,
you
dude,
know,
stop because you were defending MS-13 and Trinidad Agua, like whatever, however you say it. Like you're
now he
defending.
dropped that Trump dropped that info while that senator was on the plane, didn't he?
Yes,
I think
yeah.
he was on the plane, and then all of a sudden, all this, dude. He'd been holding that for like days, right?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
He knows that old boy's going. He's like, when he's in the air and he has no connectivity, boom. Next thing you know, it's like,
yep,
so why do you support MS-13? Wait, what? Huh?
yeah. It's yeah. Whoever, and I don't know. Oh, let me back up. RFK Jr. so far has been the only cabinet pick who has actually done something. I have been thoroughly disappointed with Pam Bondi. I've been thoroughly disappointed with Cash Patel. I've been thoroughly disappointed with Dan Bongino. Gosh, Tom Homan. Tom Homan and RFK
Yeah.
are the only two cabinet picks that have gotten after it.
He's gonna get impeached, right?
Who? Tom Homan?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%. 100%. He's going to get impeached. But you know what? You know what I'm doing if I'm Trump? The day before I leave office, I'm
Pardon.
pardoning everybody. Pardon everybody. Impeach him. I'd be like, dude, impeach me. Really? Because you guys, hey, because guess what? Impeachment don't mean anything anymore after you impeach, the bad orange man in his first term. Like impeachments don't mean anything anymore. But yeah, oh yeah, they're gonna impeach Tom Homan, for sure. But yeah, if I'm Trump, I'm issuing pardons to everybody. The night before I leave office. But yeah, RFK Jr., Tom Homan. I've been disappointed with his other picks. Pete Hegseth. He, I, again, we talked about him, in one of those episodes. I'm neither warm nor cold on him. I'm like, okay, like get out, go do PT with go do PT with some of the Joes. That's fine. Um, but at the end of the day, it's like, hey man, I do need to see a little bit more out of Pete Hegseth, before I think before I kind of pass judgment on him. But Pam Bondi and Cash Patel so far, not impressed at all. I don't know
So
what
do
you
you
think
think?
about the cabinet picks.
No, I'm looking because I agree with you, and I'll throw this back at you. Is it because it's easier to sit the sidelines and critique, but now you're in the hot seat? I mean, especially when you look at Cash Patel, right? He's in a no fail mission. Like you've said this 1,000 times. Like we've got to be right 1,000 times, and he's only got to be right once. And so, is it just so risk averse? It's just like, man, you just can't let anything bad happen on his watch. So that mission creep comes in, and like Luke likes to say, it's the everybody's got a little bit of a gulag guard in them. Uh,
Yeah.
is it because it's easy, especially when you look at, and not so much Pam Bondi, but like Cash, he was all over the podcast. He's very, not ours, but very vocal, very outspoken. And so I think that, or do you think it's just easier to sit the sidelines and start poking? Now you're the one in charge. You're the one that's got to make these decisions. And now he's like, yeah, I can't let anything like this happen on my watch because he'll take the blame for it.
Yeah, I certainly think that's part of it. I think the other part of it too is, you know, when people come into office, whether they're political appointees or they're just hired, whatever, depending upon their position, I legitimately think they're taken into a room and right, certain individuals say, "This is what we have on you," because I
Oh yeah.
guarantee you, anybody, regardless of party, regardless of who the president is, regardless of who nominates them, anybody at that level has skeletons, right? In one way, shape, or form, they have skeletons, and I legitimately believe that they are pulled in and they're like, "Hey, you're going to toe the line. Hey, you can go and you can do this, and you got to go tout your party line and whatever, right? Feel free to go do that, but when it comes time for action, just remember this will be on the front page of the Washington Post the next day, right? This is your limit of advance. Don't cross it." I legitimately believe that because at the end of the day, hey, the church hearings, they're a real thing. And you go back to we talked about him before. You go back to Jim Angleton in the CIA, bro. They were doing mail covers on U.S. citizens, politicians, everybody. They were reading that stuff like whole 9 yards. And if you think that there's folks in the U.S. government aren't doing that today, you're naive. You're naive AF. Um, and so I think that's part of it. And then the other part of it too is I don't think it's as easy to go in and change the system as they think it is. Cash Patel
Right.
is like, day one, the Hoover building's going to be, a museum. It's like, okay, man, that's a great soundbite, on a podcast, but that's not reality, right? That's not reality. But what you can do, if I'm Pam Bondi, again, where are the indictments for everybody involved in Russiagate? Why does the lawyer in DC, and I can't remember his name off the top of my head, who falsified the FISA warrant to, open up to begin surveillance on Carter Page, that guy got his law license suspended for 12 months and then he's back practicing law in DC. Why does that dude still have a law license? I'd be like, absolutely not. Right? That guy, if I'm the Department of Justice, that guy's not practicing law for the federal government. Like, you crazy? Absolutely not. Everybody who was involved, all the FBI agents who were involved in that cover up, where's the indictments? Because the Department of Justice absolutely can do that, right? Kash Patel may not be able to fire them as an FBI director, right? Because of, you know, civilian employment laws and, this, that, and the other, right? I mean, there's courts that have said, the president, the chief executive can't fire executive branch employees, which is wild when you think about it. But the Department of Justice, the Attorney General can start laying out indictments, right? And a federal judge, hey, you want to get involved with that? Then feel free and go ahead, right? I think if a federal judge can, you start trying to fire, FBI agent, FBI director, federal judge can probably come in with an injunction and tie that up for a while. Well, a federal judge can mess with indictments from the Department of Justice. That's probably a little
Wow.
bit harder.
I know the Wisconsin judge is not able to interfere with indictments because she got indicted.
She got indicted herself. Yeah, dude, that's So, I I think Kash Patel, I give him a little bit of grace because it's probably his position is a little bit harder. But Pam Bondi, you're the Attorney General of the United States. That is a
She should be
position
a
of
bulldog, right?
immense power, dude. She should be making it rain indictments. She should
Yeah.
be rain indictments everywhere, right? And they indicted what's her face in New York, Letitia James.
Yeah.
So they indicted her. Okay, yeah, that is a good start, but it's not enough, right? Because this lawfare that we watched happen from 2020 to 2024, there's only one way you stop that, and that is to turn it back on them tenfold.
Yes.
That's the only way you stop that. And if they do it enough, that they need to send a strong enough message to the other side of the aisle, like, do not do this. You don't want this, right? You may get away with it for 4 years, 8 years, but it's going to come back, and it's going to come back on you tenfold. And that's the only way you stop it. That's the only thing those communists know is power. So
No, I totally agree. And it goes back to that whole Marquis of Queensberry rules, right? Well,
yeah,
we can't do that. Well, no. I mean, I had this conversation with somebody else a little while ago, and it was like, well, you can't sling dirt, you can't get, and I get it. Like, you want to have a level playing field and fair fighting, but the other side is not fighting that way. It's
no,
like they indicted this dude twice. How many, how many federal crimes they try to charge him with? It was like
oh, a lot. I mean,
63 or whatever the
yeah,
heck it was.
the- yeah,
It's like they tried to assassinate the dude. Granted, I
right.
know it wasn't the Democrat Party, but yeah, twice you got. It's just like, hey, man, you have to go out there. And I'm like you, man. When it comes to like Kash Patel, I do agree with you. There's a little more grace there because hey, man, you're just not going to come in and wipe out the Hoover Building. Ain't going to happen. Okay. And you're talking about culture, right? It's a culture change that you're looking for that you have to have. And that's not going to happen during his term. I mean, it's going to take several, because, it used to be 10 years to director. Now they just kind of, they get rid of them as Trump did to begin with. But it takes, 5, 6, 7, 8 years for that stuff to root out all that. But like Pam Bondi, heck yeah, dude. All those people, everything from the Russian laptop to Russiagate, all of it. I'd indict them. And the great thing about indicting them is you start to put a strain on their personal resources. The best thing about Letitia James being indicted, and I'm assuming this because it's for mortgage fraud, and from what I understand, it's like the same offense that she charged Trump with.
I love it.
But because it's not in her role as the attorney general, she has to pay out of pocket for her defense. So, hey, man, the good thing with Trump is, dude's a billionaire, so he's got money he can pull out or whatever. Like, I don't think she can pull from any type of state or political funding. I think she's got to fund that herself. And
Ooh.
dude, from what I have seen with and again, I mean, you only see snippets, but it's legit like mortgage fraud. Like, hey, 'cause I think one of it, and correct me if I'm wrong, if I think one of it's for like a house in Georgia or something like that. And she claimed that it was her primary residence to get the lower interest rate. But she can't have that as her primary residence and be the attorney general in New York.
In New York. Yeah.
And then I think on the mortgage, she put like her dad was her husband or something like that. I'm getting some of the details mixed up, but it's something that's similar to that. It's like, well, because if I have him and I'm married, then I get a lower income. I mean, dude, it's straight mortgage
pretty
fraud.
evident.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty cut and dry. Yeah.
So, I think she's going to have to defend her. She's going to have to use her own money and her own resources to defend it. And I hope they take her for broke.
Oh, yeah. The whole we can't, sling mud and we can't stuff like that. To me, that comes back to, oh man, this is really going to take this thing in a different direction. So I had a conversation today with a friend. Hey Rob, quick shout out to you, brother. Thanks for listening. And we got to talking about kind of the geopolitics, specifically in the Pacific, specifically with like China, right? And we got to talking a little bit about the world is not black and white, right?
Sure.
It's nuance. And how about the United States? We don't have allies, we have interests. Sometimes our interests align with are aligned with other countries, and sometimes they're not, and that's fine, right? So their interests sometimes align with ours, and sometimes they don't, and that's fine. And use India as an example, and we've talked about this a little bit before. It's like when Russia continued their invasion in 2022, people got upset because India abstained from the strongly worded letter that the useless UN was going to send them, and people got upset and didn't understand why India abstained. It was like, well, they buy a lot of their military hardware from Russia, so they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them, so to speak. And and so the whole kind of it's like, again, the world's not black and white, it's not binary. And a lot of people who believe that binary is make believe want to look at the world as binary, and that's just anyway. So the whole you shouldn't sling mud and we can't sling mud and stuff like that, okay, well, that's great. That's a fantasy world, right? That's looking at the world as black and white, and it's not black and white. And so you can continue to believe that, and you can continue to think that, right? And you can continue to think that, and stand on that moral high ground right up to the point where they put you in a train car, and you can continue to say, well, we shouldn't sling mud. Well, the other side's doing it, and the other side's very effective at it, and the other side is going to eventually put you in a train car, and but continue to claim the moral high ground. It's what, it gets really lonely and windy at night up there. And so it's the way you get back to zero is not to continue to say we shouldn't be doing this, we shouldn't be doing this. The way you get back to zero is to punch that bully in the nose to make them stop.
Yep.
Right. And that's how you do that. You don't keep telling the bully that's not the right way to go about things. That's ridiculous, and that's naive. And that's not how this world is. And that's not how this world works at all.
No. And if you're not willing to sling mud, you better be prepared to eat it, because that's exactly what's going to happen.
100%.
If you're lucky, you'll only eat mud, because like you said, they're just going to straight imprison you. That's what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's happened over the last 4 years, which, and I know we're jumping around a little bit. The thing that is actually pissing me off the most, other than the GOP not doing dick, because they just canceled the vote on Friday. I think they're going through some budget stuff. Yeah, they just canceled that, so no vote on Friday. Just they cannot get out of their own way. The whole Biden thing, dude, and the cover up and Jake Tapper and MSNBC and Joe Scarborough, dude, it is infuriating. It's infuriating because, like, I remember Joe Scarborough getting on there and this is the sharpest and the smartest, and I don't give a damn if you like to hear it or not. Da, 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 da. And if it wasn't true, then I wouldn't be saying it. And you had Jake Tapper, teeing off on Lord Trump, like, you're making fun of his stutter. He's had a stutter forever. Now it's like, well, Jake Tapper's got a book coming out, and now all these details are coming out, which, I mean, we've been saying it for years, right? Like, I want to get on our C3 account. Like, we've been saying this for at least 6 years. I mean, and you know what? Hey, man, I'm not knocking him in his old age. I mean, heck, I'll probably, be eating applesauce and, drinking out of a straw or whatever when I'm that age as well. But I won't be the president of the United States either and have the media and the White House cabinet cover up for me. But it pisses me off how all these people are on there, all these experts, right? Because we've got so many experts. You get the economic experts and the tariff experts and, and Trump's going to run everything into the ground or whatever. All these experts just missed it, man. They just missed Joe's cognitive decline. The stuttering, the tripping, the tape on the floor with arrows to let you know which way you're going. Oh, the fact that he ran into George Clooney at his fundraiser and like didn't know that was George Clooney. Like, hey, George. I mean, dude, it's cover up, and they were complicit. They missed it. Ray Charles could have saw that thing.
It was so I'm looking at a Politico article right now.
And they're just as bad lately. Good Lord.
So Politico article, July 1st, 2024, and the title of the article is "Conservatives See a Conspiracy Around Joe Biden's Stumbles." Right? So yeah, we've called it out here numerous times on C3. Right? There is something wrong with Joe Biden. Like, he is in mental decline. He is in mental decline, and I remember specifically talking about, it was one instance that he, had an evening presser, and it was sundowning. It was clear as day that he was sundowning. And you're like, and, I remember, specifically saying, like, one of my great uncles passed away of dementia. And I was like, that it was the same thing that we saw in Joe Biden. Like, it's the same thing I saw. And it was like, dude, it was clear as day, but yet the media, like you said, are completely complicit in covering up that fact and then labeling anybody who brought up, Joe Biden, oh, that's ageism. And, it's just a right-wing conspiracy theory, about Joe's mental decline. And, when I forget who interviewed him, it's like, how's your mental focus? He was like, oh, it's focused. And everybody's like, see, and somebody described him, sharp as a tack. And then turn around, and that was like 2 weeks before the debate, right? And then 2 weeks, later at the debate, he comes out and he, basically he like hobbles out to his podium, and then he delivers what is one of the worst debates on record, right, in history, right? Knowing that, Walter Mondale exists. And dude turned around, and now, reports come out in the last couple of days, White House staffer were like, basically, we had to shield Joe Biden even from his friends, so nobody would see the mental decline. They closed him off, right? Remember that long time where it's like, dude, where is the president at? Right? They closed him off. They intentionally closed him off from even his friends so people wouldn't see his mental decline. Every single one of those people, if I'm paying Bondi, I'm finding a way to indict them, right? Because that dude, one, should have never been in office. Number two, as soon as they saw that mental decline, they should have 25th Amendment him, right?
Absolutely.
And everybody who did not uphold their oath to the Constitution, and every single one of them should be charged with violating it. Every single one.
No, totally agree, dude. It's gone so far that, and again, just the excerpts that you're seeing on X and this and that, it wasn't just his friends. They were talking about he didn't recognize some of his own cabinet members.
Well, remember they had their name placards in front of them at all the meetings? You're like, why the hell do they need their names in front? Like, that's your cabinet, right? You should know everybody at that table. You don't need name placards.
And then he was on The View the other day, and I saw a snippet because Fox News was playing it. I don't think they understand. They don't do him any favors, right?
No.
He gets on there and they're like, oh, the cognitive decline. And he speaks for like 5 or 6 seconds. And then what happens? Jill comes in to save the day, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, hey, like this is exactly what we're talking about here. But more importantly than that, and this is what bothers me, because again, when I'm that old man, I just hope I'm drinking Slurpees or whatever. But who was running the country?
Yeah.
I mean, Trump threw it out there. And again, you go back to Pam Bondi, like, hey, who was doing the auto pen deal?
Yeah.
Was that the chief of staff? Was that KJP? Now KJP's like, sometimes I just had to wing it off the cuff. I mean, these should be crimes, dude.
They absolutely should be crimes. And now if I'm Pam Bondi, I'm going back and everything that was signed by Joe Biden, that is going to there's an attorney general, there's a state attorney general somewhere, and I guarantee the guy in Missouri, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the guy in Missouri, guess what? I am going to challenge the constitutionality of everything that Joe Biden signed. Because if it
Yep.
comes out that the president at the time, if he doesn't know that he signed that and that was just some staffer auto pinning some BS, and guess what? That stuff, all that's got to be undone. All that's got to be undone. If I'm the Attorney General of the United States, I am spearheading that right now, because you think about the laws that were passed under Joe Biden, right? You think about the executive orders that were passed under Joe Biden that Trump hasn't undone yet. Guess what? You have to question the constitutionality of all that now, because we don't know who signed that.
Yep. And that's what, it pisses me off, because when you had the media that's complicit, and we're just dumb because we don't see him every day. No, dude, I saw enough of
Right.
him on TV. That's all I needed to see. But then you've got those that take the moral high ground, like your Mark Millies, right? It's
Oh,
like, dude,
Jesus.
you were the Joint Chief of Staff. You know what his mental capacity was or was not.
Yeah.
Like,
Same thing
you
with
should have been the
Austin.
first one, right? Like, hey, dude. And here's what kills me is guys like that, they don't have anything to lose. He's got his
No.
retirement. The dude's going to make 10, 11, 12K a month retirement. His career, is done. It's not like there's going to be there's no, 6-star
Yeah.
general, right? So, I mean, like, it's done. So it's like, hey, man, you're actually one of those. It reminds me like the Will Smith debacle, to my, oh, he's abused. It's like, no, the dude's got millions of dollars and can leave. You have people like Mark Milley that your career is made, your retirement is set. There's nothing they can do to you. Now's the chance that you take that stand, right? Like,
Yeah.
hey, this is not right. Or guess what? I resign. And
Yeah.
resigning in itself would speak volumes.
Yeah. No, 100%. Because you have that guy who is in mental decline, clear mental decline, and that guy has the nuclear codes.
Yeah.
That guy has the nuclear codes, and he doesn't even know who George Clooney is. At his fundraiser. It's just, but yet, Trump, Orange Man bad, right? Orange Man bad.
It pisses me off, dude. And it's funny you're going through some of the stuff, because like Politico used to kind of be middle of the road, maybe a little bit of right that I
Yeah.
remember. Like even the Wall Street Journal, they posted something. President Trump has turned the pardon process into the Wild West. What had been a sober legal proceeding done by career officials in the Justice Department increasingly resides in the White House. Like Joe Biden pardoned his entire family, including his crackhead son.
Right. His crackhead son, who was completely innocent, didn't do anything wrong, right? No evidence to to prove that, but yet he issued him a pardon. And it's like, oh, okay. All right. Well, why was that necessary? Yeah, and again, you have those in the GOP who are still actively working against Trump.
Oh yeah, more than what they know.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So it's yeah, man. It's I don't know where we go from here. As far as the politics go. But yeah, I think Trump just keep doing what you're doing. Keep the left you know so wrapped around the axle on whether you're going to accept the 470 million dollar gold plated plane from UAE, and we're like, oh yeah, we're going to use that as Air Force One. Keep saying things, and I think what he's doing in the Middle East right now, and I haven't paid a lot of attention to it, simply because I've been busy, but his his meeting with the Qataris and the Saudis, and stuff. It's, people are, of course, the left's up in arms about that because, the Saudis, perpetrated 9/11, and and they chopped up, what's his face, in their consulate, the Washington, Post reporter.
Kobayashi or whatever his name was.
Yeah. So it's like, okay, whatever, go clutch your pearls, and keep defending, MS-13. Um, but, I would like to see him get back to an Abraham Accord level deal. In the Middle East, it would be nice if he could turn around and kind of like he worked. And Jared Kushner did a lot of work on it. Excuse me, but isolate Iran like he isolated
Yep.
the Palestinians. Because for decades, for decades, it was everybody tried it. Everybody tried to get the Israelis and the Palestinians to the same table, and it could just continue to fail, and they turned around and were like, "Why are we doing that? Just isolate them." And then you wound up with the Abraham Accords, and I would like to see them do the same thing with Iran, and I think they can do it with the Saudis and UAE and stuff like that. I don't, because by and large, obviously Saudi Arabia doesn't care for Iran. And they're dealing with Yemen on their southern border and the Houthis.
And
So
even the Houthis have been quiet lately, dude.
yeah, they kind of, after we went in, and I forget what was it, a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago,
Yeah.
we had a really big bombing campaign. They kind of, they kind of quieted it down a little bit. So yeah, I would like to see an Abraham type Accord deal, isolating Iran and kind of cutting them off. That would be nice. I don't know that dealing with the new warlord who's in charge of Syria. I saw something about that, but I don't know enough to really speak
Because
on
that's
it.
Assad's son,
Uh,
right? I think.
no, well, and maybe I don't think Giuliani. No, I don't think that's Assad's son. Um, I think that dude's just some. He was one of the pick your warlord group, pick your group up north, um, who came through. I could be completely wrong on that, but I don't think it's Assad's son.
Yeah, dude, I
Um,
think Luke hit it on the head. It's like, that's like calling, Yugoslavia a country in 1993. All right.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. Syria, Syria is going to. I see Syria being fractured into a couple of different regions. They may still call it Syria for a while, but yeah, it's definitely because you have the Kurds up north and kind of the Kurds really in the northeast now, the northwest.
mhm.
I think the Russians. I have to check. I think the Russians lost their base at Tartus. And I think southern Syria is basically being run by whoever is sitting in the throne now, which is I think Giuliani. Who's just another he's another terrorist shithead. But at the end of the day, man, again, it's one of those things like, and we've said this a lot too. It's like, hey, if Giuliani can keep Syria under his thumb and keep all of those Islamic extremists in line and in check, and okay, man, you can do your jihad thing, but you got to stay here in Syria. Don't go messing with the Jordanians because the Jordanians will come in here, and scuff us up. Don't go messing with the Israelis because the Israelis are going to come in here and scuff us up. Just whatever. If he can do that, hey man, cool. You want to be a dictator in the Middle East? Badass. Knock yourself out. Be a dictator, as long as you want. Because again, that region needs anything, it's stability, whether it's good or bad stability. It needs some stability. Uh, you know, so
Yeah.
I'm
Well, I
sure.
mean, democracy is not for everybody, right? I mean, that's the
No,
reality of it.
yeah. Again, it goes back to that. It's like, hey, everybody yearns to be free. Everybody wants freedom. It's like, no, they don't. Not
No, they
everybody.
don't.
And there's some folks who, hey, man, you just guess what? If you don't like the dictator, then leave. Right? You have that option too. You know, I'd be curious to see what Sarah Adams has to say. She's got some really she's got some really good analyses and and predictions. Apparently, Trump's all wrong for talking to Syria because he quote knows about the attack. I don't know what attack she keeps talking about, but apparently she knows something about an attack that's going to be on the homeland by Syrian Islamic extremists. Apparently, um, You know,
Dude, it's grifters, man. I mean, you guys have been good calling that stuff out. It's just like now you even see it more than anything. And, again, it's part of that. Hey, man, maybe you just sit back and let things kind of play themselves out because everything that the experts have come out and said, and everything that the government, officials have come out, on the left have said, they've all been wrong. I mean, look at the tariffs, right? Lucas saying, but tariffs don't work. Yeah, they actually do work. And, and then I read an article today. They were talking about, man, it's mind boggling. Like consumer prices haven't gone up, even though of, Trump's tariffs. And it's like, well, no, one, there's always a good lag time, but a lot of this stuff has already been either renegotiated or pushed off. And then you had China coming to the table, right? China came to the table, and a lot of people don't even know this because the news doesn't report it. But I think it was like a week ago, I saw it was something that just passed across the news cycle. It was like 75% of the goods they had already paused tariffs on anyway because China's economy is getting ready to collapse. They had 40 banks go under last week.
which is wild.
It's insane. 40 banks go under. Reported unemployment before the tariffs began were 25%, which probably means 30, 32%, something like that. And we all saw the pictures of factories being shut down. Xi Jinping's got his own problems, and so they quietly 75% of the goods, and now we're kind of back to pre-tariff land. And what I don't understand, I guess we're finding out how many commie lovers we have out there, because to me, tariffs are very, very simple, and I don't think he could have said this in any plainer words. They're retaliatory. So, hey, if you put 10% tariffs on our goods, we're going to put 10% tariffs on your goods. Now, where that does change a little bit is like China, they basically closed their economy to US market or to US companies. So it's like, well, hey, you also have to remove the barriers to entry. I think that was the thing with Australia that I saw, that they don't import any US beef.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, we don't have any tariffs and this, that, but yeah, but you have a law or whatever it is, banning the import of US beef. So yeah, you don't have a tariff, but you essentially have 1,000,000% tariff because no US company can do business there.
Right. It's the same with the
Right.
chicken tax.
Yeah, exactly. So it's still waiting for it, man. But it's
Yep.
like, hey, all we're asking for is a level playing field across the board. Now, there are times where it's a case by case basis where you're helping some fledgling economy or you're gaining some favor with a country that's of strategic value where, hey,
Sure.
maybe you don't place tariffs on them or whatever. And they'll enact those as they have. But, it's like everybody that's sitting here with the tariffs and the economy and the market. I mean, you said it a couple of weeks ago. You're like, hey, a couple of weeks, the Dow is going to be at 45,000. CPI was at 2.3%. Which is the lowest increase that we've had in I forget what they said, like 4.5 years or something like that.
Yeah.
But even when you read the news articles on that, it's like economy, inflation continues to climb. It's like, well, yeah, we explained this before. Inflation rate does mean it goes up, but those are very, very different headlines than what was being played out during the Biden administration. When you saw, I mean, you remember, dude, 8-9% inflation.
Yeah. Hey man, and then it was transitory, right?
Oh
And then it was
Lord,
you remember that? You remember that line? It was transitory, and then it was like, well, this is all Putin's fault, for invading Ukraine. It's like, hold on, it's like this is made in China. Like, how is it Putin's fault that the shit I made in China is up, right? And then it was, then it was no, there's no inflation. That's just in your mind. That's a conspiracy theory, and it's like, no, like it's like the prices at the store don't lie, right? And then it was, then it's, oh, that's just CEO greed, and they tried every single talking point in the book to cover that up, you know, and instead of what they should have done, again, I don't, dude, I just, I don't know if they're messaging. I don't know if they need me, hire me as their messenger or whatever, but it's like, hey, you know what I said? I'd be like, sure, yeah, it's absolutely inflation. And you know who caused it? Donald Trump by printing stimulus checks. That's what
yeah,
caused it. There you go. Right. And it's going to take some time. It's going to take some time to get this under control. And there you go. You just bought yourself a year, you know, like just again, that's how it accounts. It's all about how you spend it. Cause we said it before, the majority of Americans are dumb. They're going to, they're going to go 240 characters deep, no more. And that's going to be what they believe. So whatever. It's I would have, with tariffs on China, I would have come out and I would have been like 200% tariffs for 60 days. We're not
Yeah.
opening negotiations until day 61. Remarks complete, and I would have just walked off the presser.
Well,
Done.
I
Like,
mean, you sent out in a text that we should have gone another 30 days.
yeah,
Absolutely,
100%.
dude. Crush
We
their
could,
nuts, dude.
yeah, dude. We could have made China capitulate to whatever we wanted, right? To whatever we wanted. Had we ramped that stuff up and just left it in place for like 60, 90 days, be like, what you got? And granted, it would have impacted us too. And we talk about that a lot too. People don't want to be uncomfortable, but it, we could have crushed them in a couple months, easy.
Well, and that's
And
what Kevin O'Leary was saying. He was like 145 or 140%. Like he's like 400%. He called for 400% tariffs.
yeah,
It's like just it's like you're saying, throw mud. It's like, hey, dude, I believe in the nuclear option up front, not real nuclear weapons, listeners, but it's like, hey, man, you got to go straight for the nut kick, right? It's like we can't just do this tit for tat. Like, hey, man, I'm slapping 400% tariffs, like you said. Hey, you know what? We're going to go 90 days. We're not even going to talk to you.
yeah,
400% tariffs. Deal with it. And then let's see after 90 days. And then you know what? Maybe we'll open up some talks after 90 days.
yeah, yeah. No, man, 100%. I would have done it. I like Kevin O'Leary. That dude's super smart, and he's able to explain things. I'm like Forrest Gump here. He's able to explain things in a way I'm able to
That
understand
we
them.
understand. Like, yeah, man,
Yeah,
why am I still broke?
yeah, exactly. He uses lots of shapes and colors for me, and he's a watch guy too. He's big time into
Where's two?
watches, and yeah, he wears two, which is wild. And any watch he wears on Shark Tank, almost every watch he gets, he puts a red band on him. And so, but yeah, he's like, and the dude's super smart. He's Lebanese.
I didn't know
I
that.
think, yeah, I think it's his. It's either his mom or his dad who's Lebanese. And but yeah, he's super
Because he's
smart guy.
Canadian, right? And his citizenship or was
I
Canadian, right?
think he was Canadian, yeah. But yeah, I'd have to look it up. Either his mom or his dad or both are Lebanese, but he's ethnically Lebanese. But yeah, man, it came from did not come from a super wealthy family, and he made his he made his money. Just super smart guy. Listen, he's got a bunch of YouTube videos out there where he's he gives financial advice but doesn't give financial advice because apparently that's Obama made that illegal without of course without a license. And so but he's hey, these are some of the things you should do, these are some things you shouldn't do. And he's really pragmatic. Like he's super, like, he goes, people who buy, he goes, I know how to tell how when people are broke. He goes, because I see people paying $6 every day for a cup of coffee. He's like, that's how I know you're broke. He's like, get a coffee pot, make coffee at home. He goes, people are spending 15, 20 bucks on lunch every day. He's like, what are you, nuts? He's like, get a loaf of bread and some sandwich meat and make a sandwich at home and bring it to
Yeah.
work. He's like, that's how you make money, right? He's like that because and he's 100% right. And so yeah, I'm a big fan of Kevin O'Leary.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So,
he was,
it goes back to it's like, hey, spend the money on things that matter, right?
yeah,
I don't need the $6 Starbucks, which by the way, you need to buy one of those two coffee pots I sent you. The Phillips dude is the way to go. And it's like half the price of when you're looking at.
yeah. So I told the wife, I was like, hey, birthday and Father's Day is coming up, so
Yeah.
feel free to combine the two. All right, and we can clear off part of our kitchen counter right now with and replace two with one, because we have we have one of the drip coffee pots that also has a Keurig on it, and then we have a a separate Nespresso. And so like I've gotten to where I really don't use the Keurig or the coffee pot anymore.
Sure.
Like I just go straight to the Nespresso, and so it's like we can get rid of both of these. We can Facebook marketplace them for $30 a piece and be done with it and clear off that counter space and put our nice new touchscreen coffee pot right here and be like, boop,
Dude, I'm telling
done.
you that Phillips 5400, one of our listeners, he bought one. He's got the newer model. I think it's the 5500. But one, if they like their foo drinks, it's pretty awesome because with the frother, it just snaps on. So you fill it up with the cream or whatever, it just snaps on, hit the button, and when you're done, it just snaps off and you put it back in the fridge. But when you look at that And then, especially out there where you're at, where you've got a bunch of local roasters. I mean, Luke can probably get you some Black Rifle coffee, but find you a local roaster, dude. You will get coffee half the price of what you pay anywhere else, and it tastes twice as good. And then it becomes hard to go back to like regular coffee.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah. We've got, I mean, there's one, two, there's 3 roasters within 20 minutes of the
Oh yeah,
house.
dude, and they would
Um,
totally cut you a deal per pound. You know, hey, you know
yeah.
what? We can plug them on C3.
Oh
Who
yeah.
was the
Tell them, be
one?
like,
We
hey
had the
man.
one who a bugle call coffee.
Yeah. We had that one. Back there. That was a while back, man, when we used to, promote small businesses. That was during COVID.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
we were kicking stuff out.
Well,
Um,
I think we were hurting a lot of the small businesses. So they were like, "No, we don't.
probably,
We'd rather you
probably.
not publicize us or
Yeah,
do
they're
any
like, "Don't
marketing."
mention us." They were like, "You guys are insane. Don't mention us." After they heard, after they heard my Somalia solution, they were like, "Oh, oh
My
yeah,
daughter, dude.
we can't be associated with these people."
My daughter's like, "What is wrong with him?" I'm just like, "Hey, man, product of his environment."
Hey, I'm more than happy. I don't want to, but I'm more than happy to take her on a road trip to Somalia, and she can see firsthand that that's really the best solution. Right? That's really the best solution, right? That's the easiest lift that you're gonna get to fix that country.
Dude, you're not wrong, man.
100%.
Most of what people see in the world is like, the old World Book Encyclopedia or what they see on X, hey,
Yeah,
look at Gaza, it looks so beautiful, or look at Kabul. Is like, no, no. That place is it goes back to like when Port-au-Prince, Haiti had the earthquake. And my daughter, she was bringing home pics or whatever they were doing in school. She's like, look at this. And, of course, everything was just like trashed and torn down. It looked like an earthquake hit it. And I had pictures from the 90s when I was there, old Polaroids where I'm like, look at this. Like it hasn't changed. That is not due to the earthquake. It actually, the earthquake, if anything, kind of helped clean it up a little bit.
she's looking at your pictures from the '90s, like, did they have an earthquake then too? Be like, nope, nope, sure didn't. It's
uh,
yeah. So yeah, the other world news. We got a new pope. We have a new pontiff.
yeah, I couldn't
Um,
care less.
yeah, from Chicago, and apparently he's a White Sox fan. It's of course that was all the talk, and it was kind of like, look, dude, I I don't find the Pope fascinating. I don't care about the Pope. You know what?
I'm
This
Southern
Pope,
Baptist.
exactly. Hey, man, this Pope, I'm sure he's a nice guy. He has family who loves him, uh, you know, and that's all well and good. But yeah, that whole Protestant Reformation thing, and nailing the 92 theses to the door, and in 1517, that kind of ended my care about who the Pope is. Yeah, I don't. Not relevant to me. I don't need to go through. I cut out the middleman. I cut out the middleman. I talk to the big man upstairs directly. I don't need
Yeah.
the middleman to tell me what I need to do, and this, that, and the other. Before I get to the big man, be like, dude, I'll just talk to him directly. You get out of my way. No, enjoy it.
Well, because something is always lost in the translation, right? And I'm with you,
Yeah,
man. And hey, like RFK with medical advice, probably shouldn't take any of your religious advice from me. But dude, I'm the same way. And that's, my wife's Catholic, and I always tell my kids and her, I'm like, hey, I don't need to go through saints and priests and popes. I'm like, I can just pray direct to the man, and you either tell me to shut the hell up or help me out or whatever he's going to do. But like, I don't feel
yeah.
like I need to go through some other human, right? To to express my, desire, wants, needs, blessings, whatever.
Well, I don't need to. Yeah, I don't need to do that, and I don't need to go and talk to a priest to be absolved of my sins, right? Because
Yep.
that's where my faith comes in,
Yeah.
right? Like, hey, you know what? I'm saved. I ask for forgiveness. I believe, like truly believe, that right there absolves me of my sins. That, and that whole crucifixion thing, right?
Yep.
Like that, I'm good. Like I don't need to go, you know, do confession with the priest and have him give me, 5 Hail Marys or whatever. It's like, sounds good, bro. Like I'm gonna I'm gonna get a tea time, or I'm gonna spend some extra time doing something else because I don't need to come see you.
So now that we've lost all Catholics from listening to our podcast, and now so that 11 is gone down to two. I do want
Yeah,
to go back to China real quick because I was a little disappointed, man. Like, when you said that we should have gone another 30 days, which I fully, I firmly believe. And I think I texted this a week or two ago. I'm like, this is Cold War V2 with China. Like, I truly believe that. I'm like, hey, man, this is the Cold War, the end of the Cold War. This is Reagan all over again. Trump is putting China in their quote unquote Cold War and is going to bring them to their knees. I just thought it would take longer. I mean, again, I know there's a lot of other things going on, like we mentioned, but I thought I thought it would take longer, and I was kind of, you don't want to see anybody suffer, but like you said, with Americans and people in general, and comfort, it's like, hey, man, you really find out what your necessities are, right? Like, I don't need a lot of the junk that you get off Timu or Amazon or whatever. And hey, man, if they're going to tariff the crap out of it, guess what? I'll go a month, 2 months, 3 months, or whatever. Now, I get it. Ooh, you can't get your same day Amazon. That's suffering. I get it. And not everybody has that luxury. But I was kind of hoping that it would go along a little bit longer because I think it would put us in a better position with China. Uh, just globally, economically, that type of thing.
yeah. I was hoping it was gonna. I was hoping it was gonna, last longer as well because I wanted to see them implode. But it goes back. One of the things it goes back to, right, with China's unemployment and China's own economic woes. Not just in the unemployment arena, right? The CCP's main goal is to remain in power. That's their main goal.
Yep.
That is their primary goal, right? And Xi, his primary goal is to remain and keep himself and the CCP in power. And the most dangerous thing for them isn't a war with us. The most dangerous thing for them is, however many billion Chinamen rising up against the CCP. And so I think, part of that calculus, he saw the writing on the wall at home and was like, okay, hey, we can't have, or the party saw it, and the party was like, hey, you better get on the horn and call the orange man, and work this out, because the anti CCP sentiment at home was probably brewing. And not that China cares about it,
Right.
but they don't want to have another Tiananmen Square, right? Not as woke as the world is today, right? It's they got away with it back then because at the end of the day, one, obviously it was advertised, but at the end of the day, people were like, well, China's just, it's whatever. They were not the global power that they are today back then. So a bunch of people were like, whatever. But today, if they were to have a Tiananmen Square and they just started smoking students, on TV and stuff like that, I think the response from the world probably be a little different. And I don't think they want that. So it's disappointing that it didn't last longer. But you know, at the end of the day, at least we got some concessions. We got some concessions out of it. We got back down to, kind of the starting point. And again, we just kind of reset it to zero, which is what we need to do across the board. With a lot of folks.
So I got a question though. I'm sitting here reading the news. I'm going through X as you're talking. Who did United Health Group piss off?
I have no
So
idea.
they are now under investigation for potential Medicare fraud. Stock is down 50%. They pissed somebody off.
You know, I'm gonna tell you right now that Medicare fraud stuff. So I have my own experience working for a healthcare company, and I will tell you some of the things that I saw because their primary source of revenue was Medicare, right? Because they primarily focused on seniors, and I'll tell you right now, uh, you know, when we were doing insider threat and getting that stood up and educating people on, hey, here's what you report to us and stuff like that, we got more than we got more than a few notices from folks saying, "Hey, I'm seeing some stuff and I don't think this is right." And basically, it was a company billing the government for services that were, shall we say, never performed. And so it was like, "Hey, so that's absolutely not what you report to us." Right? There's another entity you report that to. Um, but dude, that would not surprise me in the least. I'm telling you right now, every healthcare that takes Medicare, Medicaid, guarantee you they're doing it. Guaranteed,
Oh yeah.
100%.
Well, I'm not a fiduciary, but I would say that now is probably a good time to buy if you've got some spare cash laying around.
It's now's a good time to buy if you got spare cash laying around, like Roger said, and now is a good time if you're a healthcare company. Now's a good time probably not to be messing around, right, and cooking the books and stuff. Not with this current administration, and not with RFK Jr. running around and big balls. Yeah, it's all fun and
Did
games till big balls knocks on your door.
did y'all talk about the work requirement they're talking about for Medicaid?
No, I didn't even see that.
No, is that a thing?
Yeah, one of the things they're proposing is a work requirement for Medicaid where, and it's not a lot, dude. It's 80 hours a month. A month. That's
So
20 hours a week.
Medicaid's the ones that you need assistance for, not I get confused. Medicaid. So if you make below a certain amount of money for healthcare, whatever, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So with Medicaid, that's exactly what it is. And it's different. Like if you're not on disability where you can't work, but you still qualify for Medicaid because your income is 20,000 a year or whatever, this is what they're proposing is that it's an 80-hour work requirement. 80-hour month work requirement, which is 20 hours a week, which is 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, which I honestly don't think that's too much to ask at all. Like, I think that's fair. That's a part-time job.
Yeah.
It actually should be more than that, but hey, because obviously if they're on Medicaid, they're on a bunch of other stuff too, but whatever.
Yeah,
Step
I
in the
guess
right
it would
direction.
depend on like one job availability. I mean, if the market's good and this and that, and I mean, you're gonna be limited to like most folks can be limited to some type of fast food or service industry, right?
I would guess.
But yeah, yes. I mean, I don't know what y'all talked about. What have y'all covered?
Dude, we talked about everything, man. Shoot.
Talk
So
about Sarah
yeah,
Adams.
yeah, it's funny you bring that up. Yeah, we mentioned Sarah Adams, and her her hot takes and super in depth analysis and sourcing. We talked about tariffs and in China specifically. We talked about the disappointment that Pam Bondi and Cash Patel have been, and how good Tom Homan and RFK Jr. have been, and we alienated our Catholic listeners. And yeah,
Oh, y'all
no,
talked about the Pope, huh?
yeah, nothing
And that
bad.
was
Like
just,
I'm sure the Pope's a nice dude. I just the Catholic Church is not relevant in my life because I'm not
I
Catholic.
agree.
I don't need to go through a middleman to talk to the big guy. I just
It's
talk
like
directly to the big guy.
we were all together last week in Texas, which was nice, but we didn't record. But
Shocking.
one of the things I shared with you guys, we were at lunch one day, and Josh kind of gave me the sideways glance. It's like, it's as I get older and older, the issues that have nothing to do with me, it don't impact my life at all, I'm getting less and less passionate about. Right. So
absolutely.
one of those issues is abortion. It's like, I'm not going to spend the energy to get involved with this, even though I've got strong feelings. It's like, well, I've got strong feelings. That's just where they're going to stay, you know? And I'm with you. The Catholic Church, that's one of the things. I'm with you 100%. It doesn't affect me at all. In fact, pretty strong feelings against having priests and a pope actually to be an intermediary between you and God. I don't think that's a thing. I think that goes back to when the church first stood up, and y'all probably all talked about this already. But here's one thing that I do get worked up about. I don't think y'all have talked about this yet. That doesn't affect me at all. Is paternity leave.
We've
So
not we have not
Rogers,
talked about that.
yeah.
Oh
So
my
I
Lord.
figured y'all had talked about that. So Roger, you had a maternity leave. Don't mention any names or anything, but what's up?
So, well, I've had two cases, not me personally, just folks that I know and folks that we tangentially, deal with. So maternity leave and paternity leave. Like, so I don't have so much of an issue with maternity leave. Like, I understand it, right? I mean, there's a lot of things that you give birth and there's a lot of things the woman's got to do, heal, recover. Also, there's, a lot for breastfeeding and, taking care of the baby. I have a problem with like paternity leave. And I didn't know, I think we even brought it up before in the podcast, maybe a couple months ago. Like, I didn't know that was a real thing. Like, I'd heard about it. Like, you hear it all over the news and, you hear X and some of the lawmakers go back and forth. And I knew maternity leave, obviously, my wife had to take leave when she gave birth, but I did not know that paternity leave was a real thing. And I did not know that paternity leave was like just as long as maternity leave. So, this recent instance, dude, it's 4 months. Like, I don't get that. Again, for the women, I don't know what the right amount of time is or whatever, but again, there's a recuperation period there, recovery, there's feeding the child, that type of stuff. For the dad, like, dude, for the life of me, I cannot understand why they need 4 months off. And more importantly, it's like, well, who pays for that? I mean, the small business pays for it is who pays for it. I mean, the state ain't paying for it. Federal government ain't paying for it. It's like, I don't understand, Luke. Like, why does the dad need 4 months? Well, I guess maybe if you're Pete and what's his husband's name? Chase, whatever.
Something. Oh, now you're killing me. I can't remember his name, but it's something like that.
Yeah, I don't know if months, they're chest feeding or something like that or whatever, but like 4 months.
Hey, it's not like I'm. This is where I'm going to compromise because I've been watching a lot of Mad Men lately. And like there's something to be said for that. Man the provider, woman the. When I say homemaker, that is not a negative term because my wife works her ass off. It's just the two of us, just taking care of the home, and she has a job because it just doesn't occur to me to vacuum every day. I'll let it go until it's misogynist. Okay. Now, when I notice it, it's like, oh shit, it's gone too far. But it's a full-time job, taking care of kids, mothering them, taking care of the house. You guys both know, dude, that is a lot of work, and it's admirable work because men are not cut out to do that. We're just not. We're not built the same. We don't.
So how often should the house be vacuumed?
Every day. If you have dogs like ours, every day. Every day. Okay. In our house, at least, because we got the floors. Well, yeah. Does Bear not shed a lot?
He doesn't shed a lot. I mean, he sheds, but he doesn't shed a lot. Carpets get vacuumed once a week. The Roomba gets run every other day on the hardwoods.
Well, yeah. We Roomba doesn't work in our house because there's too many level changes. We're getting beside the point. I was trying to go somewhere with that. So I'm more with the late 50s, early 60s mindset of let's have the nuclear family, let's have the man be the provider, all this stuff. We could really go down a rabbit hole on that one with the feminist movement and women into the workforce and how that has been detrimental to the family. But with paternity leave, this is where I'm willing to make a compromise. Like in the Mad Men days, it's like, you left work to go see the wife give birth and you're back at work the next day, Now, this is where, like I said, I've said 3 times now, compromise a little bit because you guys have been through it. I have not. What's a reasonable time? So, Roger, you're a small business owner, right? You when I say small business, you have 75 employees. You are making ends meet, but just barely, and you want to hold on to your people. So you're like, you know what? I am going to offer paternity leave. I'm going to do that. What's an acceptable time? Because you got a big heart, right? Unlike me or Josh, you got a big heart. What's an acceptable time? 2 weeks? 1 month?
4-day weekend.
Really? I mean, come on. Because Josh, you said it yourself, to heal up, breastfeed, all that stuff. But she's doing that, not the husband.
Yeah, that's my point. Yeah, for the dude, like, well, you know what? I think a lot of it just depends because
maybe a week then. How about a week? You get a week paternity leave.
I think a lot of it just depends.
I was going to say a week.
I think you're right.
I could probably go along with a week, but it just depends because it's Depends on the nature of the work. What position are they filling? Is it an overhead? Is it a contract position? Overhead's a lot easier to suck up, right? Like you can do that. Somebody steps up for a week, 2 weeks, something like that. I could, a week makes sense. But for those of us that fill contract positions, like, hey man, like, are you really going to be out of that, be able to be out of that government space for 2, 3, 4, 5 weeks or up to 16 weeks?
No, six.
I mean,
weeks. Absurd.
I think my little nephew, he's 22, but I think he got a week of paternity leave. He works for a small business in Amarillo, Texas, and I think they gave him a week. They might have gave him 10 days, so 2 weeks. But they did, and he was grateful for it, and he helped out. And once that 2 weeks was done, now his girl is taking care of the baby, and he's out working 50, 60 hours a week, as he should be. It's
now,
like,
is that 2 weeks not having to expire all your PTO, or does that include using your PTO?
They paid him.
In addition,
I don't think he used PTO because he was really grateful for it, and I remember him making a big deal. But dude, he's so young in the full-time workforce now. He probably doesn't know the difference. They probably might have just spotted him.
they took his days anyway. They're like, you're good.
It's one of these. It's one of these, right? I think a week is completely acceptable, right? Not only, and it depends, right? Also, like, was it natural birth? All of a sudden, was it an emergency C-section? Right? Like what happened? What, again, it's kind of conditions based, right? So let's say, normal birth, no issues, right? Mom has to recover. She's going to be in the, mom and baby are going to be in the hospital for 2 days, afterwards, 3 days afterwards, right? Roughly. And so that's 3 days afterwards right there. And once they get home, you got a whole new routine. You got to work out. Mom's still not 100% recovered. Right. And, you gives you a couple days to, kind of get into a little bit of a routine, right? Your whole life has been upended. You're on a 2-hour sleep cycle. You're waking up every 2 hours. Even if mom breastfeed, you're getting up and going to get the baby, right? To bring her to mom, her or him to mom. And so I think a week, maybe even 2, I think is completely acceptable, right? For paternity leave. It's like, hey, just to make sure mom's good, get everything situated. Everybody's in their new routine. All right. Now dad's back out on the grind. I think 16 weeks, that is absolutely absurd.
I think it's
absolutely
healthy.
Absurd.
I think it's healthy for the guy. Now I'm going back to no paternity, maybe 40 hours. So 1 week you get 40 hours. Okay. And if you got sick leave built up, you got to take it out of that, whatever, because
I dig that.
When Roger sent that message out the other day, it triggered a lot of stuff in me. And I just gave the speech about how I shouldn't get worked up about this. I don't, but this one I do, because it go back to not even the caveman days, like the 1700s, right? It's like, I believe, like deep down, that when a father sees that child born, especially the first one, I think there's a motivating thing that happens. It's like, oh shit, it's real now. I have to get out there and provide for this. It's the woman's job to suck it up. And that's why women's job is hard. That's why I say it shouldn't be working. It's hard. The woman's job is to suck it up, get over the injuries, and start taking care of that kid and form that mother-child bond, while the husband's out there hunting buffalo or harvesting whatever because he's motivated. It's like, oh my God, it's not one mouth to feed now it's 2.
We just alienated our last 2 listeners.
I don't care. But for 4 months, you're taking that motivation away. Now that none of us have anything to do with this company, when I was working for, which I hated, by the way, they were 4 months maternity leave, 4 months paternity leave, maternity was something like half a year. And it's like, and I guarantee you, there's probably something written into the contract you sign, like you can't be fired while on paternity leave or maternity leave,
Sure.
And cutbacks and stuff. It's just, I'm totally against it. Now, I don't know. I guess 16 hours. I'll give 16 hours paternity.
Wow.
Use your sick leave for that.
I think I could go with a week. I can dig a week.
I think a week's completely acceptable. All right.
I think you do a week, and then, hey man, if you want to burn PTO or sick time after that or whatever. But back to your other comment, I think you were offline or hadn't come on yet. I asked Josh, like, who did UNH piss off? Because, you had their CEO resign, their stock is down 50%, and now they are under investigation for potential Medicare fraud.
It doesn't surprise me. I mean, I saw the writing on the wall with that CEO, man, Andrew Whitty, Sir Andrew Whitty.
No, Lord.
Dude,
There you go. That's your first problem right there.
He oversaw, and he oversaw basically that stock, UNH stock, losing about 40% of its value.
Ouch.
And yeah, 40%. And, all of these healthcare companies, it's not just United Health, it's all of them are leveraging Medicare and Medicaid in a big way, especially Medicaid. And it's like, it's very easy to take advantage of that. But dude, again, it's not a healthcare company. I realized this after about 8 months of working there. This is not a healthcare company. This is a quarterly earnings company, and they'll do whatever it takes to hit those quarterly earnings. And that's what that CEO was brought in to do. And it's funny because he got fired from like Pfizer also, but United Health Group thought it'd be a good idea to bring him in. It's just, the downfall, Roger or Josh, whichever. I mean, when the United Health, okay, so you've got a United Health Group, it's a big company, huge, very large. Used to be number 6 on the Fortune. It used to be the 6th largest company in the world. Now, I don't know what it is, but under UHG, you have 2 arms. You have Optum, which is the healthcare arm, and you have United Healthcare, which is the insurance arm. And the guy who got assassinated in December of 2024 was the United Healthcare, the insurance arm, CEO. Now, almost immediately, within a week of him being assassinated in Manhattan, their stock started to fall. So,
Right.
United Health Group stock started to fall. So and then other stuff has been happening. It's all precipitous. I'm not in the loop on that anymore. But Roger, do you think, or Josh, whichever, do you think that assassination like triggered something where people started looking at healthcare stocks and like, whoa, maybe this isn't such a good deal?
I think that's part of it. It certainly did not help, right? That drew a lot of undue attention. But I think the other part of it too is you have an administration right now that they're opening the books, and they're looking at these ledgers, and they are like, hey, these things are not adding up, because it's not hard to turn around and look and say, okay, you're rendering services, right? You submitted X number of claims. Okay, well, you submitted 57 claims and you only have 20 patients, and looking at each patient, this patient only has 1 claim, whatever. The math's not adding up, and it doesn't add up very quick. And so I think it's a mixture of things. I think that the assassination certainly didn't help, but I don't think it's it's just that one thing.
Yeah, and you look at all the news surrounding whatever, I forget his name now, the guy that's allegedly murdered him or whatever. I mean, people took a deeper look into healthcare, right? And I got it. The guy's father wasn't even insured by them and this, but people looked and they started digging a little bit deeper. And I think it goes back to what Josh was saying, with some of these other companies. My son went to the emergency room about 2 weeks ago, and he had food poisoning. He had food poisoning in the middle of the night.
I was like, again, your kid's always going to the emergency room.
He's always hurt, but he had food poisoning, whatever. Yeah, it got to the point he's like, I got to go to the emergency room. So he goes to the emergency room, and he has healthcare coverage, and he's got pretty good healthcare coverage, especially for what he does and this and that. He got the bill, and he's like, Dad, like, I'm having to interpret all this stuff for him. He's like, I owe $400. And I'm like, well, I mean, you got copays and this and that, and your insurance kind of depends on blah, 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 right? And your deductible. So then I look at the bill from the hospital. It was almost $3,000. He's like, and here, I don't have an answer for this. Maybe one of you guys do. One, the healthcare system, we've talked about a million times. It's broke and it needs to get fixed. And I don't even know where to start because, part of his thing was, they charge him $25 for a Band-Aid. And then, they put, some sodium chloride in them. And then there were like 3 or 4 other things. He understood the sodium chloride, but he's like, I didn't even ask for this other stuff. And he was never given the option to be like when I take so I go to Revel Vet here, which I love them. I go there with my dog, and they don't make me feel like poop when I don't, get the $50,000, whatever it is, regeneration for my dog. They're like, hey, they break out the iPad and they go line by line. here you go, sir. Here's what we recommend. Here are the line items with the prices next to it. Let us know what you want. Right. And so I'm like, okay, I know what my budget is. I weigh, what my dog, his longevity is going to be, this and that. And I don't understand to some extent now, withstanding emergencies, understand that. But like, man, I should like be able to choose and see prices. What am I going to pay out of pocket? What am I not? What am I paying for? Because I will tell you this, $3,000 for a bag and a half of sodium chloride and a Band-Aid, dude, that's excessive. And I know why we have it, because we're paying for Pookie and Ray Ray who don't have coverage.
Well,
Yep.
that's what it is. It's Medicaid and to an extent Medicare that drives up and it's systemic. This is a deep problem that we could probably dive into and do a whole podcast on it. Where the reason that's one of the reasons that's $3,000 is because somebody comes in, they're on Medicaid. Medicaid is going to reimburse once that $3,000 bill goes to Medicaid. Medicaid is going to reimburse a certain portion of that. Now,
Right.
that emergency room or whatever, that care clinic, wherever he went, they're not going to they're not going to lose any money. I guarantee you that. But Medicaid is probably only going to reimburse maybe $1,500 of that.
Sure.
So their profit margins from Medicaid are going to go down slightly. So they got to ramp up those profit margins, because these are all for-profit companies, man.
Yeah.
And it's not health care we have, it's health coverage, but whatever. So that's where it is. They're trying to recoup their profits from somebody who actually does have insurance. And then it turns into, as the audience probably knows, if you have the time, you can spend some time on the phone with the insurance companies haggling over this stuff. Well, wait, how come you're not reimbursing this whole thing? And they'll come back with some BS and all this. And you're like, well, wait, no, wait. And then maybe instead of owing $400, now you owe $250. Only if you have the time to do that. Because my wife is a freaking expert at that stuff. We get these, the statement of benefits or whatever it's called that they send you. I can't remember what it's called, but they send you this. It's
Right.
like, this is how much, this is what's covered. This is how much you owe, similar to what he got, right? She'll get on the phone with the insurance company or the hospital and just line by line. And invariably, we end up paying a lot less once she gets on the phone. So yeah, the system's broken, and it's a for-profit thing, as it should be. But you inject Medicaid in there, and now they've got to recoup their profits, because again, what I say about UHG and all these other places, they're not healthcare companies, they're quarterly profit companies. They're in it for the money. So, and
I mean,
Josh,
whatever happened to the whole, and I think maybe it was during Trump's first term, where it was, you should see what you're paying before you get it. Right. Like that there to me would solve a lot.
Yeah.
Well, while Josh is yawning, that happened to us when my wife had some surgery. I don't know, maybe it was 2015, 14. She had some surgery, and they actually told us up front how much it was going to be. And we're like, whoa. And we had to have a
She
negotiation.
doesn't really need anesthesia.
Yeah, that's what it was. But basically, they were trying to not strong arm us, but to see how much they could get out of us on the front end. Because they're like, well, you're going to have to pay today $1,200 and you'll get reimbursed. I'm like, no. We're both, this was the day of her surgery, but whatever. Josh said rampant fraud, and going back to UHG and all these other companies, they're not the only ones. What they'll do is they'll offer a bunch of services to their clients, right? Whether it's home healthcare, it's usually home healthcare. And it's like a diagnostic type service. So think of it like a timeshare type thing. So we offer this service. It's only going to cost Medicaid $50 for this one visit. But what they'll do is they'll go in and look at anybody on Medicaid. They've probably got type 2 diabetes, right? And they probably got a bunch of other stuff based on that. So they go in for this $50 visit, and they'll diagnose them with 20 different things. And that goes on the record. So now Medicaid's got to pay for the follow-up treatments for all that stuff. You see how that works? It's like, it's not really fraud, but it kind of is. Kind of doesn't seem right. It's just, it's a scam. Not a scam. What's the right word for it? It's a system. It's a grift.
It just pisses me off, because if we went to the clothing store right? And they're like, hey, this guy over here only pays $10 for the shirt because his income isn't as high. You need to pay $20 for the shirt so you can offset his 10. I mean, it's like the prescription drug company we were talking, Josh and I were talking about earlier. I mean, that's exactly what's going on, right? They're sitting there, they have to offset that. And we've seen it nationwide, we've seen it globally where the US offsets everybody else's cost. And it's like, man, I understand the economics behind it. To me, it just sounds extremely illegal. Because if we did that with any other item or any other service, like you get sued.
Yeah.
If we walked into a grocery store and they're like, oh, you only pay 50 cents for the apple, but you, sir, you're paying $1.25, so we can average it at 75 cents. Like, dude, that grocery store would cease to exist. They'd be sued out of existence. But somehow, some reason we're allowed to do it for healthcare or health coverage.
The first step in fixing healthcare and the easiest thing to do to fix healthcare is to get the government out of it.
Yeah,
it's just
absolutely.
Like, stop subsidizing it. It's just like student loans. Hey, if you want student loans to get fixed, get the government out of them. And that'll be the fact that, I can't see a doctor, across state lines or, it's like, if you're doing telemed, where are you located at? Oh, you're in a different state. I can't talk to you. I can't help you, because you're in a different
So
state.
dumb.
It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the fact's like, I'm not licensed, I'm not licensed to practice in that state. Right. Same thing with lawyers. It's like, I'm not licensed to practice in that state. It's like, you have a law degree. Did you pass the bar? Right. The bar in Florida should be, good for, it's like a driver's license. It should be good enough, to practice law in Oklahoma. It's absolutely ridiculous. And a lot of these things is the only reason they are that way is money. That's it. It's so a state say, oh, no. You have to get our license and you have to pay to take our test. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you're spot on, dude. I mean, I think I told you guys my wife did the Ways to Well thing. Can't remember if I said on the podcast or whatever, and I won't get into the specifics as far as the medicine, or whatever. But what I do know is this: she paid for a consult, blood tests, and then when she sits with the consult, they give her this regimen or whatever. I was actually shocked at how cheap it was because they have their own compounding facility. And they don't take insurance. So everything is cash. They get it. You pay it. They get it. They don't pay anybody else other than their employees and overhead or whatever. And I would tell you this, for the stuff that my wife is on, for rheumatoid arthritis and some other injuries, this and that, she didn't come close to paying what my son paid for his emergency room visit. Not even close. And there were 3 different prescription medications that are not overly common. And I know some folks who have gone to their healthcare provider to get some of these and they pay, 3-4 times the amount. But, you go private like that. They've got nothing to do with the government. They compound their own stuff. You pay them directly. There's no insurance. And it's at least half the cost. It's insane.
Yeah. Yep. No, man. 100%. And, yeah. I want to see RFK burn it down. Just burn it to the ground. Everything.
Well, what worries me what the healthcare thing is, like, it's almost like it's too big to solve, right? It's like there's so much money in it. There's so many people tied to it. When you look at the FDA, where they get their funding from with the pharmaceuticals and this and that, it's like the healthcare industry itself. It's like, it's just so big. It's like, hey, and the problem is so big is like, can you actually fix it? Can you actually put a dent in it?
I don't think you can. It's what was it? The, Freddie May, stuff. It's like, hey, it's too big to fail. It's got to, put a Band-Aid on it and just, roll with it.
Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae. So
Freddie Mac, Fannie Mae.
Josh just sent a text to the group. The Minneapolis city, whatever, is preparing for a possible Chauvin pardon. And I just love, it's funny when you crack yourself up, when you said something, because I sent the soccer coach meme, to the group. But I mean, I sense a profound, or I see, I guess, and maybe I'm seeing this wrong. I see a profound sense of malaise on the left right now. Like I don't know what it's going to take. They're getting tired of the Israel Palestine stuff. Do you think that if Derek Chauvin is pardoned, that we're going to see a resurgence of the Black Lives Matter and all cops are bad or whatever? Or
100%.
do you think you do? You do?
Yeah. Yeah.
You don't think they're
100%.
tired?
No. Nope.
Well, it'll be interesting when that happens because around midterms would be a good time.
I was about to say, right? So it's midterms coming, and guess what they get to do? He pardoned, he pardons Derek Chauvin, or the governor pardons Derek Chauvin, or whatever, right? Dude, it's going to be the summer of love. It's like, oh, look at this, racism, and that train is never late, right? And that gives them a big push into the midterms on you got to get these racists out of here. They let 50 white people from South Africa in. Look at all these racists. Yeah.
Maybe we should talk about that. Have y'all talked about that? I figured y'all would talk about that.
No, but real quick on the Chauvin thing, one thing I think that could, I don't even know where, like, did, Trump just threw that out there or whatever the case was, but I mean, you'll have your Crockett's and those folks that'll get out there and try to, grift off of it, but his state time was longer than his federal conviction time. So the guy is not getting out of prison. I mean, Trump can do it. And like Josh said, oh, you're all racist or whatever. But I mean, the guy's still going to stay in prison unless, the Minnesota governor were to pardon him, which we know that Wallace is not going to do that.
Well, some of the pundits I've heard talking about this case in particular, Ben Shapiro's a big one. And Ben Shapiro's grating on my last nerve, by the way, with the whole Israel stuff. It's like, dude, we got it. You love Israel. You got divided loyalties. I got it. But he is a lawyer and he's a good one. And he was saying that if he is pardoned federally, and if, depending on the write-up of the pardon, that could affect like the sentencing on the state level. But again, it's Minnesota, so probably not, but they could re-look some of the evidence and stuff. I don't know. But have y'all seen the memes? And I'm doing dog whistles here. Have y'all seen the memes and stuff about the exhaustion? White exhaustion. You haven't seen those? I'll start sending them to you.
No, I'm not on 4chan, Luke.
I'll send them to you. I guarantee you've seen these. I guarantee you've seen them. But the South Africa thing I think is interesting. Goes all the way back to, England, the Netherlands settled South Africa way back in the day. It was, a colony and all this stuff. And it was predominantly a Dutch colony first. And Afrikaans, the language that used to be spoken in South Africa predominantly, is basically Dutch. It's like ghetto Dutch. If you speak Dutch, you can understand and speak Afrikaans. It's real close. But yeah, so it was a Dutch colony. The English came in there and took over at one point, and the Dutch farmers and the Dutch, who were running the place basically, they weren't having it. And those people were called the Boers, Boer. They were basically white farmers, white businessmen, stuff like that. And there was something called the Boer War between England and the Boers in South Africa. I think the Boers ended up losing that one because it was England. England was taking no prisoners back then. So, and that was in the 1800s, I think late 1800s. And yeah, so you had, everybody knows this. Well, maybe not everybody knows, but everybody knows about apartheid. Apartheid was, South Africa was predominantly black, but all the politicians, all the government was predominantly white, like 98% white. So when Nelson Mandela stood up and, when Nelson Mandela really got in trouble was, it's funny, he got the Nobel Peace Prize, but what he got thrown in jail for was declaring peaceful protest is over. It's time to get violent. That's when the apartheid government, the government of South Africa, threw him in jail. Because it's like they knew they were in trouble at that point. Because apartheid is a tough thing, dude. I mean, it's not, if you've got 90% of the population is black, but the government is all white, you can't be having violence from 90% of the people. You're going to get overthrown. So
Right.
yeah, they had to quash that. So yeah, and then apartheid was overturned. A lot of pressure on them, and since then South Africa has just kind of been on a downward. I wouldn't say spiral, but they're kind of going the way of Zimbabwe a little bit on a much slower track. Now they did get rid of apartheid, but you still have whites in the government. For the most part, they get along. But I think the ANC, African National Congress, it's a communist party in South Africa, has really been turning up the Marxist heat on all this race stuff. There's Chance Kill the Boer, predominantly black or all black parties saying kill the Boer, which is kill the white farmers. And there have been a lot of white farmers getting killed in South Africa and their land being requisitioned by whomever. I'm not an expert on the subject. I just kind of know what's going on. And Josh said, I don't know if you said it on the podcast or if you said it in a chat group, Josh, our chat group, where you said, my cousin or what is he? It's not your cousin.
He's my wife's cousin.
Your wife's cousin's husband, right? He right? Whatever.
Yeah.
He's a farmer. Yeah. He's a farmer in Kansas. And one of the things he's seeing, you said this like a year ago, is there's a lot of South African farmers showing up and working, and they really know what they're doing. It's like, oh, yeah. I mean, this has been going on for a while, this stuff in South Africa, probably about 10 years now. So Trump, and I just don't know why he did this. You didn't have to make a deal out of it. It's like, hey, if these people are being persecuted, they've got a legit reason to claim amnesty. So you had the 53 white South African families, farmers, come over here and claim amnesty in the U.S. And like these guys were saying, Josh and Roger, it's like now everybody's up in arms about white people. 53 white people coming in 2025 when there were how many millions over the past 4 years of non-whites coming in. That wasn't a problem. But you got whites coming in, 53 of them, and now it's a problem. So that's like a once over the world history. So Josh, I mean, what do you think about this whole thing? Because we could go deep on this.
We can go deep on this, but we don't have time since you decided to show up an hour late.
Yeah.
So it's a one. So it was Brandon and Jarrett that were on the on our podcast who were talking about that, right? When they were talking about farming and stuff like that, they said, Brandon brought up they were seeing a lot of South Africans start to show up, on farms in the Midwest and stuff to work, and they were coming. And this was probably a year ago, right? So again, C3, we were ahead of the curve. On this stuff, they were showing up to work, and because like you said, everything that's going on there. As far as like what I think about it, it's I don't know. I get it, but at the same time, like there's a fight that's going to happen in South Africa, right? Like you said, you brought up Zimbabwe. Before Zimbabwe, it was Rhodesia. There's a fight that's going to happen, and every able-bodied person that's going to choose to stay and fight, they need every ally they can get, right? Even if it's however many fighting age, military age males were in that group of 53, right? And I mean that's just the the bottom line of it. They took those Dutch that you talk about. They showed up and they brought South Africa on the dark continent. They made it a shining beacon of light. Right now, yeah, and I get apartheid bad, and everything, but at the end of the day, you take a look at every country, every colony on that continent was more prosperous than that country is now after colonization. And even the countries that didn't get colonized, guess what? They are not prosperous countries, right? It's just that continent's a tough place, man. Tough place. Leonardo wasn't lying in Blood Diamond when he was like, "This is Africa."
Can you imagine?
It's I just you take a look at it, and those people have been around on Africa longer than the Boab tree, and yet they're going to take that country. They're going to kill everybody that's not the same color as them, and they're going to run it into the ground. And that's just. And I get, the whole they should stay and fight. Not everybody's built for that, right? And people are just like, hey, I want to live in peace. I have a family. I want to make sure that they get get over here. And, it's kind of hypocritical for us to say that, people shouldn't, leave their country and, come
Who
over here.
who's
But
saying who's saying stay and fight? Well, I haven't heard that one.
no, I'm saying there's a fight coming,
Oh,
right?
okay.
There's a fight coming. It's
Yeah.
going to be, again, you're going to see, Rhodesia all over again in South Africa, because eventually somebody's going to put up a fight. And
Maybe.
I don't. They're going to lose, right? Just sheer
They're
numbers,
gonna
like you
they're
said,
gonna lose. They're gonna lose because they're not gonna have any support. I mean,
right?
who's gonna support? I mean, back in the day, like Rhodesia and South Africa, back in the day, there was money to be made, and Eben Barlow knows that the best with executive outcomes,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Well, hey,
you know,
there's nothing saying Eric Prince won't show up,
oh,
in
that's a
in
death
South Africa.
sentence. That's a business death sentence to support, white farmers forming, PMCs, private military contractors, to defend their land against blacks. That's not going to fly in today's world.
Yeah.
That's a business death sentence.
Yeah. Well, there's going to be a fight at some level, right? It might not be a big, Rhodesia level fight, but there's going to be a fight at some level. So, but I get it. People, hey man, if you got the opportunity to come to the land of milk and honey and get your family out of a very bad situation, then hey man, I get it. Do it the right way, and all is well.
Check this
So
out. So
there's got to be a
go ahead.
connection, right? Like when you talk about your family and the South American or South African farmers coming in, I'm looking at these 53 white farmers. Like I'm actually looking at the process of them, claiming asylum or, refugee status or whatever. They had to have some connectivity back to the States. I'm just wondering, trying to maybe not necessarily, your cousins, those folks in that area, but they had to have some type of connectivity back there to, I mean, it's like, hey, you're 53 white folks down in South Africa. I mean, how did that actually happen? You know what I mean?
There
Yeah,
always is.
yeah. I don't know. They had to have. There's probably some connective tissue here. They have family here, or, already
Right.
here, or whatever, right? Or some church sponsored them, but not the Episcopalians. They're out of the refugee business right now that there's white people. The Episcopalians. Whatever.
Check this out. So I was at a city council meeting in Amarillo yesterday. What is today? Wednesday? Yeah, I was at a
Yeah.
city council meeting last night, and a girl got up and spoke. A young girl. I say young girl. She was 30 years old. She gets up and speaks, and she says, I don't know, whatever she was talking about. She says, because I immigrated here from Kosovo. I was like, oh, well, I'm going to have to see where she lived, because she came over in 1999. No. So she came over here in 1999. And anyway, I talked to her afterwards, her and her sister. And for those of y'all who've been to Kosovo, these were typical Kosovar Albanian women. Put it to you that way. But yeah, they were from Gjelani in Kosovo. They knew Farazai. And to this day, I was telling them about my experience in Kosovo. I told them, a couple of my buddies have been there too, all this stuff. This girl was very young when she left. The other girl had just been born. And to this day, they are still appreciative of the U.S. troops coming in. I mean, it's amazing. Like those people remember that stuff. Most Americans don't even realize today, we ever went to Kosovo. But they are still appreciative of the U.S. troops that went there. Hey, they've never been to Kosovo. What you just said. I'm not closing it out, but I thought that was pretty cool. I shared that with the guys. It's just, it's crazy how stuff comes around, 26 years later, but pretty cool. Go ahead, Josh.
A lot of those places are like that. I when I was in Korea and especially talking to a lot of my instructors and the older folks there, it's they remembered what it was like, especially the older folks. They remembered what it was like before the Americans came, and like with my grandparents, and so they were extremely thankful and felt they were blessed. And then unfortunately, that begins to fade, and then probably a generation or a couple year groups younger than me when I was there, you could see it in the youth, right? The youth didn't have it hard growing up. The youth didn't remember communism and that type of stuff. So they, Tim's like, well, hey, this has always been the way it is. Like, what do you mean? Well, yeah, there was no McDonald's here before the Americans came here. They just they don't have that perspective. So, I think it goes around. It's like I forget his name. We were talking about Kevin O'Leary earlier, but the guy who created the Kind Bar, that's what he was talking about with his family and how the Americans helped him out a lot. So anyway, we're at the end of this episode. We finally got all of us here. So I guess we'll call it C3, not C2.5. Luke was able to hang with us to the end. So appreciate your 25 minutes worth of input there, Luke. But, as always, thanks to everybody who listens. Thanks to everybody who watches. Keep your canteen cups tightly secured and full of some good booze.